said, we're just going to cover the basics of sports nutrition. I'm just going to, as Corey said, we're just going to cover the basics of sports nutrition. Nothing too specific. As I'll probably say a few times as the talk goes on, sports nutrition and nutrition in general is very individualistic. It's very specialised to you. So I can't really stand here and give you too much detail about all your individual requirements and all your individual goals. That's something that can come on later. So what I'm going to do today is just talk about getting you started and kind of build a foundation. I'm sorry if some of it is you've heard it before, it's too basic, but we want to start everyone at the same level and just go in from the start. So just a little bit about me so you know who I am. So I've got a Master's in Public Health Nutrition and a PG Cert in Sports Nutrition, which I did at Glasgow Uni. That means that I'm registered with the Association for Nutrition and a graduate member of the Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register. And they're quite important because these days anyone can really call themselves a nutritionist. You can go on and do a 6-week course and kind of say that you're a nutritionist. So when you're able to register with these kind of governing bodies, then it just means that there's a bit more credit to the name of a nutritionist. As Corey said, I've got a website and blog, and I've done a few things like this before. I've done workshops for Netball Scotland, Boxing Scotland, Scottish Swimming, the performance nutritionists at Edinburgh Accies Rugby Club. I'm going to my 3rd season with them now. And I've got a little nutrition consultancy business. So I take on one-to-one clients and a broad range of athletes, runners or people that done Ironman, sailors, that kind of thing. And I'm doing a PhD at the moment, but that won't really come into it. So just the basics. Before we jump into sports nutrition, I just want you to remember that when you think about exercise and nutrition, a lot of it is about keeping yourselves healthy. It's not necessarily thinking about supplements and really specific things. It's about keeping you free of injury, free of illness, to allow you to train to the best of your ability. It's about hydration, which I'll come on to later, and also to help you speed up your recovery. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go through, there's kind of 7 basic principles of sports nutrition. I'm going to cover them all. And then after that, I'll go on to a little bit about hydration and a little bit about the macronutrients and what are good sources of things in your diet. So the first principle I'm going to talk about is meeting the energy and fuel requirements needed to support your training program. So as your training develops, nutrition is there to complement it and to, as I said, help you recover, help you fuel your workouts. And we want to, first and foremost, make sure that you're getting the right energy and you're getting enough energy to help you train. And also because you're all quite young, you're still growing, you're still developing, we need to make sure that you're getting all the fuel that your body needs to support that as well as your training. We want to be able to achieve and maintain a suitable physique. And the important bit at the end is without compromise to health and performance. So if you want to put on loads of muscle mass or you want to lose all your body fat, then that's maybe what you need to do, but you also need to remember that you need to be healthy and you need to be able to perform at your best. So you don't want to strip all your body fat and then realise that you can't really train very well. Support recovery and adaptation between training sessions. So that's a really, really important one. Adaptation comes from the different things in your training programs and also how your nutrition complements that. Your carbohydrate intake, your protein intake to help your muscles and your your circulatory system, your heart all respond and adapt to your training to just help you get that little bit fitter and a little bit stronger every time. We want to think about competition, so how your training is going to differ from your competition nutrition. Can come on to that a little bit later, but hydration and also fueling is going to be a little bit different. As I said, we want to think about reducing the risk of illness and injury. So if you can keep your muscles strong and supple, then you're less likely to go over your ankle, or if you're eating the right foods, you help build up your immune system, so you're not putting yourself at risk of illness and things like coughs and colds, which are going to put you out for a little while. So there are things that we can do in our diet that can help boost our immune systems. I'll talk a little bit possibly about the use of supplements. The big thing to consider is making well-informed decisions. So, as I said, nutrition is very personal, it's very individualistic. You don't want to be doing something that someone else is doing just because they're doing it. And if you develop in your career, things like doping and supplements might come into play. And we want to make sure right at this level that you're taking the right things and you're aware of what's going on, so doping doesn't become an issue for you later on. And then the last one that I'll talk about is eating in a manner that supports long-term health. So getting your nutrition spot on for your specific competition is great, but you want to be able to compete for many years. So I'm going to make sure that your long-term health is considered as well. So number one was meeting the energy and fuel requirements. So let's just fire some things at me. Where do we get our energy from? Food, yeah. First and foremost, we get it from our food. What kind of food? Starchy food, yeah? What's a broader term for starchy food?
Carbohydrates.
Yeah, carbohydrates, exactly. As basketball players, most of your energy is going to come from carbohydrate, if not all of it. We do get energy from fat, but the energy that we get from fat is a lot harder for our body to use. We store loads of fat. We store so much more fat than we do carbohydrate. We can store it everywhere. We've got a limited store of carbohydrate, but our bodies really struggle to break down the fat and release it for energy, so most of our energy is going to come from carbohydrate. So where do we think, so we eat something that's carbohydrate. We'll come on to carbohydrates later just to cover the basics, but when we eat a carbohydrate source, where do we store this energy?
Does it convert to like glucose?
Yeah, so we've got two places that we can store energy. So you take in a carbohydrate source and it gets broken down into glucose, so hydroglucose. So glucose goes around your blood, and so you'll have something called resting blood glucose, so that's just all the energy that's going around your blood. And if we don't immediately need that energy, it gets stored. So the body pushes it either into your muscles or into your liver, and it gets stored as something called glycogen. And if you think of glucose as just an individual little thing, and then glycogen is sticking all those together and storing it in the muscles. We store a lot in our muscles, and then we store a little bit in our liver. The thing about muscle glycogen is we store more, but it's quite selfish, and it only goes to give energy to the muscles. It doesn't give it to the rest of the body, whereas the glycogen that we store in our liver, there's not as much of it, probably a quarter of the energy in our muscles, but the glycogen that we store in our livers is really generous, and it'll supply the rest of our body, so it'll give energy to our digestive system, and it'll feed our brain and all things like that, whereas muscle glycogen is really quite greedy. So when we're thinking about basketball specifically, what do we think the fuel demands of your sport are like? Think high carbohydrate, high energy? Yeah, so as I said, most of, or all your energy is going to come from carbohydrates, and we want to make sure that we are meeting those fuel demands. So when we come on to carbohydrate later, we just want to think about the best sources, where we're getting the carbohydrate from, how we're storing it, and how to get the best out of our diet in that way. So number 2 was the suitable physique and not compromising our health and performance. So we said at the start that if we've got other workshops or other talks later on, that's when we can cover more specific things. So if there are questions about putting on muscle mass or losing body fat or achieving a certain physique, then that's something that we can talk about then. But just what I want you to take away from this is that it's personal to you. If your friend needs to put on some muscle mass and you don't, then you don't need to be eating the same things. So just remember that it's all very, very personal. So number 3 was recovery and adaptation. I'm going to come on to the kind of specifics of basketball and what it does, or the skills that you need and how nutrition is going to influence that. But what happens to your muscles when you train?
The fibers, do they not get broken? You have to refeed them.
Yeah, exactly. So when you run about, you jump or you lift weights or whatever it is that you do, your muscles are being broken down, they're being torn and ripped, and that's how we adapt to our training, that's how the muscles get stronger. But they're only going to get stronger, they're only going to repair themselves if we put the right things back into our body after we've trained to help all that repair, adaptation and recovery. So what can we do? What can we do to help our muscles and our body recover? Protein intake. So we can put on muscle mass. That's something that the body can do, but it needs both a source and a stimulus. So if you're not training very hard and you're eating loads of protein, then that's not necessarily going to mean that you're going to get really bulky. Your body needs a stimulus to kind of tell it to take in all this protein and do something with it. So the stimulus would be a hard training session, a hard weight session, and then once you've got that stimulus and your muscles are hurting and they're broken and they're split apart, once you then start putting the protein sources into your body, the body goes, okay, I'm going to start doing this, and it starts repairing everything. What also happens, so our muscles feel really sore, they've been broken down. What about what we talked about as number 1? Do we think we're still going to have all the glycogen that we stored in our muscle at the end? We're going to have used that up, aren't we? We might not have completely depleted it, there might still be some there, but if we reduce our glycogen stores, which is where our energy comes from, and we don't do anything to replace it, and then you want to go and train the next day, are you going to be able to train at the best of your ability if you've got fairly low glycogen stores? No, so when we think about recovery, we think about carbohydrate and we think about protein. So we're thinking about repairing, and we're also thinking about replenishing.
See, just on that, Tess,
Yeah.
Maybe for these guys, is there any other sort of telltale signs that your stores are down other than just feeling tired or maybe not being able to train, at the best of your ability? Are there any, physical signs
Of low glycogen?
Yeah.
I mean, apart from really heavy legs, if you've you've ever watched a marathon race and you've heard of a term called bonking or hitting the wall, that's the term for low glycogen. And that's when people literally cannot take another step because their glycogen is being completely depleted. What you want to do is avoid that. Because once you get to a point where your glycogen is depleted, it's really, really hard for your body to get your energy back in. So when we take on carbohydrate during a training session or during a competition, yeah, you're taking on carbohydrate and it's going around your body in your blood as glucose, but it's also preventing your glycogen stores from being depleted. So the more glucose, so the more carbohydrate that's going around your blood, the less your body's going to tap into your glycogen stores, and you really do want to avoid that total depletion in glycogen. But apart from feeling generally heavy and fatigued, there's no real signs of glycogen depletion. You kind of don't know until it's too late, so that's why you just need to kind of keep taking in carbohydrate. As I said about the liver glycogen being quite generous in fueling the rest of your body, the liver glycogen can break down to glucose and that can fuel your brain. So quite often if you've got low glucose, you've got low glycogen and things like that, you're going to feel a bit fuzzy and you're going to feel fatigued in your brain as well as in your muscles. So just remember that as well. So eating and drinking appropriately for a competition. I have no idea what's happened. That was a basketball hoop. So what does a match day look like for you guys? Is it different? Are you all in at different levels, or is it?
I'd imagine across the board it probably is going to be someone. Yeah.
The different ages here, obviously, they're 14s up to 18s here, so, but I would imagine the preparation should be much along the same lines.
Yeah.
They've got the same length of game almost.
Yeah.
It's obviously a bit more physical when you get to under 18s. Some of them play seniors as well, so it's going to be a bit more physical.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the amount of time they're spending on court, it's much the same.
Okay. So when we think of competition and we think of matches, that might mean a bit of travelling. It might mean eating away from home. It might mean prepping your food as opposed to having something at home. So those are things that you need to consider. What you're bringing with you, what your lunch is going to look like. Are you travelling quite far? Are you going to be able to have something that's going to help your recovery soon after? Are you going to have to wait a couple of hours until you get home? Can you prepare things to have before and after? So that's how your competition nutrition might differ, and that just means a little bit more prep time. So reducing the risk of illness and injury. I mentioned things like coughs and colds. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is your risk of a general cough and cold. And this is the amount and intensity of the exercise you do. So a normal sedentary person, desk job, doesn't really do much exercise. They've got a kind of average risk. When we exercise a little bit, we reduce our risk of coughs and colds because we're just that little bit stronger, a little bit better at adapting. But if we then go to high intensity and we're training every day, twice a day, all the time, then our risk of these coughs and colds actually goes up. So if you're getting to that point where your training and your competition is quite intense, then you do need to pay a little bit more attention to your immune system and helping your body recover, fueling your body in the right way to help your body respond to this kind of greater risk of just little illnesses and injuries. if we're thinking about injuries, I've said it before, making sure you've got strong muscles and strong bones. So we're gonna concentrate mostly on the macronutrients, which are carbohydrate, protein and fat today, but the micronutrients I'll touch on a little bit, and they're things like calcium, your vitamins and minerals. So I'm sure you've all seen the adverts for Petit Flu and the little French girl that says that they make your bones grow stronger, and that's because of all the calcium. So with you guys who are growing and developing, you want to get loads of calcium into your bones. I've just kind of reached my peak in what they would say for bone density. So when you're younger, you take in calcium and your body puts it all into your bones, makes them big and strong, and your ability to put down all your bone density, once you reach about 25, that's your peak. So it goes downhill after that. So basically up until about 25, you want to be getting as much calcium into your bones to just get your bones as strong as possible when you can. We'll talk about protein in terms of muscle strength, and we also want to be thinking about carbohydrate intake in terms of, as I said, glucose fuels your brain, so keeping your brain healthy and going, and carbohydrate is related to your immune system. So if you have a low carbohydrate diet, that immediately puts you at greater risk of things like coughs and colds, because it just it reduces some kind of enzymes and things that go around your body and just puts you more at risk of things. So if you are, if anyone goes on to a low carbohydrate diet or a weight loss diet or anything like that, then it's good to consider your immune system at that time. I'm sorry about that. What this is, it's actually a really nice picture, never mind. So making well-informed decisions about the use of supplements. I'm not going to talk about any specific ones, but this is a pyramid of nutritional priorities, and at the bottom we've got calories. So the first thing I said was fueling and making sure that you get the right energy requirements for your sport. So that means getting enough calories, and it also means that you're getting enough calories for your growth and development. The next one is your macronutrients, so your carbohydrate, protein and fat, whether you're getting the right balance of those, but you can't consider the balance of your macronutrients unless you've got your calories right. So calories is always at the bottom. After that, we can think about our micronutrients.
Do you want a pen to put that on the board?
Yeah, can do that. If anyone wants to copy it. Is this going to wipe off? This one.
That's a whiteboard, yeah.
Okay, so we've got calories at the bottom, always has to be the base of the pyramid. Then we've got our macronutrients, carbohydrate, protein and fat, and how much of each of those we're taking in. After that, we've got our micronutrients. So I mentioned calcium. Other things are iron, other vitamins and minerals. We can only consider our micronutrients once we're getting the other two right. And then we've got meal timings. And again, if in later workshops, the timing of your meals is something more specific, and it's more personal to you as well. So it just means how long you're leaving before you train after you've had something to eat. And then right at the top of the pyramid, that's where supplements come in. And you've just got to remember that it's right at the top. And you've got to get all of these right first. Because there's no point supplementing your diet if you're not even taking enough calories to fuel your training. So that's what that picture is. So just remember that, you've got to work from the bottom, and supplements are always going to come last. This little logo here is something that might come into play as you get older, and if you get to higher levels and doping and anti-doping comes into the field. So you'll all have seen supplements and tubs of protein and things that you can buy in Holland & Barrett or in Boots or on the internet. And while they might have their own merits, they might not necessarily be bad. When you're considering sport, then this little logo means that these supplements have been batch tested, and it means that they've kind of made sure that there are no nasty things in there. There's not no chance, but there's a much reduced chance of there being any things in there that might lead you to doping. So a company or a supplement company would have to go through Informed Sport, get their supplement batch tested, and then they can put this logo on their bottles or on their tubs, and that means that you can be fairly confident that they're going to be okay. So just bear that in mind. They've got a website if you want to have a look at informedsport.com, and it lists all the supplements that have been batch tested and are deemed a lot safer than others.
Just on that, more for the guys that are maybe at the international stage, but what a lot of you guys might not realise is when you're signed to a club, you're actually also signed up to the anti-doping policy that Basketball Scotland will have. So it's actually, even though we're talking about maybe even the next level up, it's actually a very significant part of your performance right now. That on any given day, Basketball Scotland, within reason, are entitled to drugs test. There's probably age-specific categories that I'll apply to, but a little story was when I was at my former club at Fury, we were in the Scottish Cup final and a player got ejected, and subsequently was immediately pulled in for a drugs test because it was seen as sort of an irrational behaviour for him to get kicked out of the game, and they had people there to drugs test. So it's something to seriously consider. Alright.
It's not an easy thing to consider though until they know actually what they could be taking as wrong. There's a few of these guys going away to international competition soon to the European Championships, and Basketball Scotland issued them with the anti-doping list, okay? As if they're going to look at that and go, yeah, I understand what all this is and where I can find this, right? Because it makes no sense to anybody. It's just a whole list of different products. And in fact, it's not even products, it's just, you know, things that are out there that could be chemicals, basically.
Yeah.
So they gave them that, and then literally within 2 weeks ago, when they're out on pre-season, pre-tournament training, they've told them that when they're coming to competition, they need to be bringing their protein and their electrolytes. Which I immediately went back to them and said, this is kind of crazy though, isn't it? I mean, how can you expect all these kids to travel with individual little bags of powder through security? Would it not make more sense for the governing body or you guys as coaches to bring a big tub of protein? If you want them taking, an all-in-one protein shake or whatever, pre or post game, would it not be better you guys doing it and controlling it rather than all these kids taking different products in individually sealed bags through security and then taking different electrolyte drinks or, you know, mixing it all up, because when they're out there in international tournaments as well, sorry, they're all going to be eating different foods or foods that are given to them in a different country. So
Yeah.
it's difficult in terms of the supplement thing to know, because obviously a lot of these kids will see protein. Everything's got protein added into it, and it's a great thing to see protein. Oh, I need to get some of that. But as you're saying, you know, the body can only take so much protein as well. You know, so if they're loading up on loads and loads of protein on top of already having 4 chicken breasts a day, you know, they're taking in too much protein,
Yeah.
and their body's not being able to break it down, or breaking it down, it's just firing out as waste or whatever.
Yeah, so at this level, nothing's provided, but do you get to a level where they would provide it?
No, I mean they've said they've said obviously to the players to bring protein
Yeah.
and to bring electrolytes.
Well, there's not a huge amount you can do apart from maybe thinking about what you are choosing and whether it has been batch tested and whether, because you're not going to know whether it's got all these substances that you've got a list of in it, but things like informed sport and trusted by sport means that you can be fairly confident in it. So that might just be something to bear in mind instead of having loads and loads of different proteins.
But how much would be, you know, see in terms of protein alone, how much protein would, as a supplement, these kids need to be taking? Or
It
if any?
depends what the diet's like.
Right.
As I've said, it all calories, macronutrients, like protein powder might not even come into it at all. So it needs to come from the whole meals and kind of food first, really. There's no one answer for everybody, but as you said, whey protein or a protein supplement might not even be applicable to anybody in this group at the moment. So it seems a bit bizarre to tell them necessarily to bring it when they might not even be needing it. But yeah. Okay, last one in the basic principles was eating in a manner that supports long-term health. This also is about enjoying your food, not thinking about it just as a fuel and just as a way to recover your muscles and help them repair, but you're going to be eating for the rest of your life. You need to enjoy what you're having, enjoy what you're doing. So that's just a broad look at it, but when we're thinking about long-term health, we can be thinking about our fruit and vegetable intake. You'll have heard fruit and veg are full of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. They do loads of things in your body. They help keep your brain functioning well, and that's all going to be applied to as you get older. Omega-3, that's another thing that they've considered in brain health and the health of your heart, health of your circulation, all those little parts. Are you getting enough omega-3? They're all more long-term goals. Okay. So I'm just gonna appropriately have some water and talk about hydration. It's touched on briefly in kind of the basic principles of sports nutrition, but it's a really important one. Water does loads of things in the body, so it transports all the nutrients that you're taking in. It also helps to get rid of all the stuff that you don't want. It cools down the body. When you're training, you start sweating, you get warm, and taking on water helps you to cool down, helps you digest your food. and it also helps you lubricate your joints, so you want to keep them nice and supple. So you've maybe experienced dehydration at one point. You might feel a bit dizzy, you might not be able to concentrate as well. Sometimes fatigue, which you think is in your muscles, is actually coming from the fact that you're dehydrated. So you may want to consider your water intake before you take on fuel. And being dehydrated means that your heart basically has to work harder to pump blood around your body. Everything just works a little bit slower when you've got less water content. And the last thing you do when you're running about a court is to make your heart have to work harder than it already is. So making sure that you're rehydrating, you're fully hydrated before you start is really important. Kind of think little and often, making sure that you have plenty with your pre-match, your pre-training meal. And just a quick little thing, how do we monitor our hydration status? What can we look at? Yeah.
Urine.
Yes, exactly. So the colour of your pee, that just shows you how dehydrated or hydrated you are. So if it's dark, you need to take on more fluid. You want it to be light and there to be lots of it. And it's important when you're training and when you're competing to make sure that you are fully rehydrated afterwards. Okay, so when we're thinking about basketball specifically, you can throw some more of these at me, but these are things that I've thought about that are maybe quite specific to basketball, specific in your game, in your training, the things that you'd want to consider. So you want to be focused, you want to be concentrating, and now I'll talk about how your nutrition will come into these, but got to have a little bit of speed, endurance, strength and power, and flexibility and agility. And these all come from your training, but they'll also be affected by your nutrition and your diet. So flexibility and agility, we want strength in our muscles, and because of the fact that water lubricates your joints, then making sure you're hydrated is going to help you with your flexibility as well. Your strength and your power for your jumping and changing direction and things like that, that's going to come from your muscles and how much protein and how strong they are. Endurance, fat is probably not going to come into it as a fuel source. You are going to be running primarily on carbohydrates, but just thinking of them as energy stores for endurance. Your muscle glycogen, as I said, is where you're going to get your energy from for your speed, and also making sure your hydration status and your blood glucose is good to help you focus and concentrate throughout the whole match. So what I'm going to do, they were the basics of sports nutrition, a bit about hydration, so I'm just going to talk about some of the foods, macronutrients, sources, just to give you a little bit of a few examples of things. So I said what the macronutrients are. So macro means big. So these are your carbohydrates, proteins and fats, and you need them in large quantities. And your micronutrients are things like vitamins and minerals, things that you need in smaller quantities, but they are still essential. So these kind of your sodium, which comes out of your body when you sweat, calcium, as I said, goes into your bones, helps them get stronger. And then if you look at the second tier of the pyramid here, your macronutrients, that's where the composition of your diet comes into play. So for a general sedentary person, they might want to have about 50% carbohydrates, no more than 30% fats and about 20% proteins. But people who exercise, you guys who are running about and growing and developing and are training quite hard, your carbohydrate intake could go higher than that, because you're needing more energy than someone that is sitting at a desk. So your carbohydrates could go up to 55-60% of your diet, because that's where all your energy is coming from at the end of the day. So, carbohydrate sources, throw some out for me.
Rice.
Rice, yeah.
Pasta.
Bread.
Yes, exactly.
Potatoes.
Anything else?
Pasta.
That was oats. These pictures are going to be awful, aren't they? Rice, bread, that is lentils and things like chickpeas. They're also a carbohydrate source. Fruit and veg. Fruit and veg are carbohydrates, so don't forget those. And also sweets. They're carbohydrates. Anything that has got sugar in it is a carbohydrate, basically. They're broken down in different ways. You're going to get your energy a lot quicker from something that is pretty much just glucose or just a simple sugar. Your body's going to break that down much quicker and much easier than it is something like rice, which has got fiber, it's got protein, it's got all those other things in with it. And you know, things that are really high sugar, they might come into play at some point. So if you are training back to back and you've got no time or you're feeling really, really low energy, then I'm not going to stand and tell you to have a bowl of rice if you've got half an hour between two training sessions. If you need a boost of energy, then you need some kind of instant carbohydrates. And things that are sweeter, I mean, you can use dried fruit. There are healthier sources of high energy foods, but everything has its place. The things with fiber in them, so your pasta and your bread and your rice and your oats, they'll have fiber, they'll have protein in them. They take longer to break down, so that means that they stay in your body longer, and they keep your blood glucose at a good level for longer as well. When you take in something that's really high sugar, we call it a simple carbohydrate, and it peaks your blood sugar, and that could be great for a match or a specific training session, but it's quite likely to bring it down quite fast as well, and that's when you might feel a bit, oh god, rubbish. Whereas if you let your blood glucose come up slower, and you've got all the other things like your fiber and protein that are taking longer to break down, then your blood glucose is going to stay at a higher level for that little bit longer, and it's going to help your endurance. So just bear those in mind. Everyone bangs on about whole grains. Whole grains are good because they've got extra fiber in them. Fiber is good for your gut health. It's also good for reducing some of the fat that goes around your body, and it's also good at slowing down the release of energy from your foods. Okay, sources of fat. What have we got? Nuts. Yeah, great. What else?
Seeds.
Yep.
Cakes.
Cakes. Yep. Cakes have butter in them. Anything else? Where else do we get fats from in the body? What do we cook? Would you throw some vegetables
Oil.
into a dry pan? Yeah. So oils, butter and cakes, nuts and seeds. There are some vegetables like avocados that have lots of fat in them. Eggs, lots of fat in an egg, and cakes, donuts and things like that. People, I don't know if people are still a little bit afraid of eggs. Who's heard of the eggs and cholesterol kind of things? Anyone avoid eggs because they're high cholesterol or anything like that? Good. That's the right answer. Your body's very good at staying in the right balance. So if you take in cholesterol in the diet from something like an egg, then your body stops producing it, and it means that you stay at a constant level. So you can't really increase your cholesterol levels by eating cholesterol. What you do need to be careful of is your saturated fat, because you can store saturated fat, and saturated fat can increase your cholesterol levels, and that's what clogs up your arteries, and it makes your blood run a little bit slower around your body. That's your risk factors for heart attacks and things like that. Oily fish. Anyone eat salmon? Great. That's a really good fat source. I mentioned omega-3s, so this is a great place to get your omega-3s. Our diet at the moment is quite bad for being high in omega-6. I mean, they're both good nutrients, they're both essential, we need to get them from somewhere, but the best ratio for omega-6 to omega-3 is probably around 3, 4, 5 omega-6 to omega-3, but our diets are probably sitting around 10 to 1 at the moment, if not much higher. And we get omega-6 from things like salad dressings, so cheaper oils, things like vegetable oils, and that tips the balance, tips the proportion of our omega-6 to omega-3. And as I said, omega-3 is really good for your joints and your heart and your brain. So thinking about your omega-3 intake is a really good thing to do, and sources like salmon, trout, other oily fish, a really good addition to your diet. So what do we use fat for? Anyone got any things that we need fat for? So the big thing here is we need to not fear it. Your body needs fat. Fat keeps you warm. It insulates the body. It helps transport these specific nutrients. These specific vitamins are fat soluble, which means that they can't be used by the body unless they are with a fat source. So even if you eat loads and loads of vitamin D, you can't really use it unless you've got some fat going around your body as well. So just don't be scared of fat. We do need it for some things in the body. So protein as well. It's got a lot of functions. Transport, movement, structure of your muscles. It's needed for the immune system, and you'll know it's needed for growth. The average body contains about 12 kilograms of protein, but that is constantly being turned over. The protein that you had in your body last week isn't going to be the same as what it is now. And your protein intake can influence your muscle mass, and it can influence your metabolism. So the more muscle mass you have to fat mass, it's going to help everything. Your metabolism is how you break down your food. So if you've got a little bit more muscle, a little bit more fat, your body's going to use the calories that a little bit more efficiently. So what are some protein sources? You should be able to see some here. Where can we get our protein from?
Chicken.
Chicken? Yeah. Meat, chicken, white and red meat.
Beans. No.
Yeah. Eggs, good source of protein. I mentioned things like lentils and chickpeas as a carbohydrate source. They've got loads of carbohydrate, loads of fibre in them, but they've also got a little bit of protein, so they're really good for vegetarians as a protein source. Baked beans are included in that as well. There's some people say that nuts are a good source of protein. Some people don't. I personally think they're more of a fat source. than a protein source. If you try and eat loads of nuts to increase your protein, you're going to be taking in a lot of fat and a lot of calories. And whereas you could get a really good protein source from some lean chicken as opposed to eating loads of nuts. This is just some examples of where you can get protein from. Plant proteins are often a bit harder to use than animal proteins. But as I said, our body is in constant turnover and it has pools and stores of amino acids. So even if we don't get everything we need from a plant protein, chances are the body will have stored a little something in there to make it better. So things like milk, eggs, as I said, lentils, fish, chicken, cheese, all good sources of protein. You mentioned about your body not being able to use loads of protein, and the kind of the accepted level of protein that your body can use in one time is something maybe about 20 to 30 grams in one go. So above that, your body's really going to struggle to break it down and to push it into the muscles and everything like that. So having a dose of 60 grams of protein in your evening meal, a lot of that is going to be wasted. You're going to pee it out, or you can turn it into fat, those kind of things. So when you're thinking about protein, want to think about spreading it out throughout the day. Thinking food first, you don't necessarily need to supplement. 20 to 30 grams in one go is about as much as you can do, and thinking about where you're getting it from the right sources. So your chicken and some lean red meat, and also adding in things like lentils and chickpeas to get that fibre, get that carbohydrate as well. And that is the end of this. So fire on any questions that you've got, and I'm quite happy to answer anything.
Go to parents first if they've got them. Anything?
I was just going to ask about what your thoughts are about sports drinks.
Anything else?
Well, we don't tend to use them, but I just wanted to know a lot of kids use them, and I just wanted to know what you thought about them, if they're necessary or not.
So the body has enough energy to last probably about 90 minutes. If you've got a good high carbohydrate diet, your body's got a really good store of energy, and it'll tap into that. And if a training session or a match or anything is less than 90 minutes, then a lot of the time you won't really need any carbohydrate intake at all. So even though it is in a liquid form, it's still carbohydrate, and it might just be excess sugar that's not really required. You've got to consider tooth decay when you're thinking about sports drinks. They are practical in that they can be transported, and they're fairly trusted, that things like Lucozade, you're not going to find too much wrong with them. So sometimes unnecessary. Think about tooth decay. But where they would possibly come into play is, as you mentioned, electrolytes. So a really hard training session, anyone that sweats a lot, you're going to sweat out electrolytes and salt and things like that, and it's quite important to replace those. And a lot of sports drinks have those electrolytes which will help you to replace it. You can make your own electrolyte. Things just add in a little bit of salt or bicarbonate soda and a little bit of sugar to a drink. That means that you can monitor how much sugar is in it. But a lot of the time sports drinks are quite unnecessary if you can get it from another source and really build up your stores anyway.
Right, you got a question?
Yeah, it was about the like protein and carbohydrate. I've heard the term like carbohydrates are protein sparing. I'm not sure if like you could tell me what that actually means.
Carbohydrates are
Protein
Protein.
sparing.
sparing.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you've heard. It's like about like building muscle. Like they were saying like it was like on a video. It was just saying that carbohydrates are protein sparing. Something about there's only I don't know.
So if you're going back to basics, you can use protein as a energy source. So that might be where it's come from. So if you've got no carbohydrate stores and no fat stores in your body, then your body is going to use protein to get its energy. That's when you start losing all your muscle mass. So taking in carbohydrate is going to be protein sparing, because it means that you're going to use the carbohydrate as energy as opposed to eating into your muscle mass to release the energy.
What about for you guys, just so we can sort of shape this going forward, what do you find is the most difficult thing to understand about, you know, your food and whatever, or preparing for games, just so that we can have a better understanding going forward? Is timing's an issue for you guys?
I think like what like, the amount you're going to eat, like I eat quite a bit, and but if I don't eat too much or I'm not eating enough because I'm trying to I'm eating too much and I'm not eating enough, or like what I'm eating is you know, like too fatty because I want to.
Have you ever monitored how you feel after what you eat though? In terms of you feel good, or you feel sluggish, or you feel bad after eating too much, or too much is something that's the wrong thing to eat at the wrong time or what?
I've not really like noted it down with that, but like you can, like I say, if I eat a bit, I eat a lot, I feel a bit better than if I'm not eating enough.
What chances are you need that food then?
Yeah.
If you feel better when you eat more, then your body's using that fuel and it needs it. So then you should continue to have that much.
Is there any kind of general rule around the time it takes your body to process energy from the food?
Not a general rule.
It's very individual. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
it depends on how efficient your digestive system is, and also the type of carbohydrate, how much protein and how much fibre is in there is going to quicken up or slow down the release of and the breakdown of everything. In terms of kind of pre-training or pre-match, I always tend to go for 2 to 3 hours, because you need to, so it obviously goes into your stomach and then it needs to get down into your intestines, and you need to leave enough time for it to get out of your stomach, because if you train or you start running about once it's still in your stomach, that's when you start to feel rubbish. So you need to allow for that emptying time. Your body will still be able to digest the food once it's got into your intestine, but it won't be pumping as much energy into it. It'll be using it for your muscles, for your brain. But it is, you know, some people can go and run after half an hour after having something. Some people can't have anything 3 hours before. It comes down to a lot of trial and error, unfortunately, which is not the answer you want, is it?
What I thought. David?
When you were talking about like muscle tearing and stuff like that,
Talking about what, sorry?
your muscles tearing and stuff like
Yeah.
that, how important or how much rest would you need to give your muscles before going back at it, sort of thing?
It depends on the training session. If you and how you feel as well. Everybody's going to be different in how well they recover. I'm still recovering from a leg day last week. Like, I'm awful at recovering and my muscles feel horrendous for days. But if you feel quite good, then you might be able to go again the next day. But it is also going to be down to what you put into your body afterwards. Whether you've put the right proteins and carbohydrates in there to refuel everything to help the repair, you might be fine for the next day.
How much grams of protein like can you take on a daily basis?
Can you take overall in a day. So the recommendation for a normal person is 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight. So if you can do that maths based on your weight, that's the average person. If just remember 0.8 and times that by your weight in kilograms. That's what the overall recommendation for protein intake is for a normal person. It's difficult with growing boys and people that exercise. Your requirements might go up, but it's hard to say. It depends on your exercise levels and things like that, but 0.8 is the recommendation as a kind of minimum.
I think I've got one, and it's probably more geared to these guys that still got competition, but I'm sure it'll probably be a good tool throughout the season. But immediately post exercise or post activity, what would you recommend is the first thing that should pass their mouth in terms of a food source or drink, or I mean, what would you recommend?
Immediately,
Post game, post training.
water first, rehydrate first. Depending on how much you've sweated, then you might need a little bit of electrolyte in there that might come into play. That's the first port of call for recovery post-match. And then you've maybe heard about this 30-minute window of opportunity for post-match recovery or post-exercise recovery. It's not like you don't have to stick to 30 minutes. If you don't have anything to eat within 30 minutes, you're not going to waste away and lie in bed for the next 3 days. That's not how your body works. Those 30 minutes are just where your body is maybe a little bit more primed to take in the nutrients that you're giving it and to deal with them. But when you've started breaking down your muscles and whatever you're doing to them, your body is in a kind of repair mode for another 48 hours. So as long as you're getting good sources of protein in the next hours, days after your training or your match, then you're gonna be helping your body. Immediately, you want to be taking in carbohydrate and a little bit of protein. Water first, a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein. They say about 3 or 4 times as much carbohydrate as protein. So the first thing you want to do is get the glucose back in. So 3 to 1 carbohydrate to protein, and water intake as well. But don't worry if it's not immediately after. If you go home and you've got an hour until you have a really good solid meal of carbohydrate, protein, veg, lots of water, then that's going to be just as good probably as throwing something down that's available that you might not enjoy, or just because you feel like you need to recover, it's not necessarily the best thing.
I know what you're saying, it's all individual, but I've got a daughter who lives on rolls and sausage and cereal.
What was the first one?
She lives on rolls and sausage and cereal. So at a later stage, can you give kind of, I'm not asking for menus, but suggestions of what she could be eating during the day? Well, I can't later question.
Yeah.
It's like she's in at night time and all she eats is cereal, that's all she eats.
And our sausage roll's better than steak Fridays.
I think, yeah,
There's no fruit and veg, there's nothing, so
I think that
I've
would-
always seen something written down,
yeah, I
so
think,
that I've got to be able, I've got to eat so much veg, I've got to be eating this every day,
yeah,
that'll help her.
I think,
Because no, it's me just telling her, she's not listening to me, but I think if she sees something,
I think that's something that probably I'd be probably looking at work with Tess on, is if we could work around some sort of like guidelines that we can maybe put into a document or whatever. But no, certainly that would be something we could steer towards in future sessions. But in the meantime, I think if anybody has any additional questions or topics that they want covered, then fire them to me, so that when I'm in discussion with Tess about when we're going to put in the next session, we can steer it more towards that. I think on that, Tess, thank you very much for your time.
Right.
Thank you for the introduction I'm sure these guys will take away a lot. We've obviously recorded the video, we will post it up on the Facebook, the closed group, and then, like I say, we'll start steering it again if there is specific topics that need covered. Yeah, sounds good.
Yep.
Alright,
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks very much.